A bald man in black walks slowly toward the camera. No expression, no hesitation. He has been shot, burned with acid, and left for dead. Yet he keeps coming. That chilling image from a cheap 1973 science fiction film would go on to inspire Michael Myers, the T-800, and an entire generation of unstoppable screen villains. But behind the camera, the real story was just as chaotic as anything happening on screen. Welcome back to Golden Flicker. Today we're exploring a production that was, by all accounts, a recipe for disaster. We're talking about a film shot in a frantic 30 days, plagued by on-set accidents involving misfiring guns and rattlesnakes, and produced by a studio that was convinced it would flop. But, against all odds, the film became a huge box office success and inspired major blockbusters in the years that followed. Do you remember the first time you stared into those cold silver eyes? Let's open the park gates to the chaotic production of 1973's Westworld. In the early 1970s, Michael Crichton was a fascinating contradiction. He was a Harvard-trained doctor who had never practiced medicine, and a prolific novelist who had published over a dozen books under 4 different pseudonyms. He was desperate to direct his own material, but Hollywood saw him merely as a writer. The spark for Westworld didn't come from a dream, but from a terrifying contradiction Crichton witnessed in the real world. On one hand, he visited the Kennedy Space Center and watched astronauts being trained to suppress their own reflexes and make their heartbeats as predictable as a machine. On the other, he visited Disneyland and saw the Abraham Lincoln animatronic delivering the Gettysburg Address every 15 minutes, a machine built to act like a person. Crichton realized something profound and unsettling. We were training people to be machines, and building machines to be people. He tried to write it as a novel.
I tried the idea of Westworld as a novel, and it didn't work. Some strange way, it doesn't work on paper at all. It only works as images.
But selling it was a nightmare. Every major studio passed. They thought the mix of genres was too weird, too risky. The only door that opened was MGM, a studio with a reputation so radioactive that legends like Stanley Kubrick and Robert Altman had publicly complained about the toxicity there. Crichton's choice was simple: make the movie with the devil, or don't make it at all. The deal was simple. Crichton could direct, but the budget would be barely over $1 million, and shooting would last exactly 30 days. Things went wrong immediately. MGM demanded script changes right up to the first day of shooting. There was no locked screenplay and no rehearsal time. Crichton had zero control over casting, and the 2 leads, Richard Benjamin and James Brolin, were signed just 48 hours before production began. Then there was Brynner. Once one of the biggest stars in Hollywood, Ramesses in The 10 Commandments, the King in The King and I, Chris Adams in The Magnificent Seven, Brynner was broke by 1972. Tax issues and a dried-up career had left him desperate. He accepted the gunslinger role for $75,000, roughly $485,000 today, a fraction of what he had once commanded. His costume was nearly identical to the one he wore in The Magnificent Seven. What had been the outfit of a heroic gunfighter was now the uniform of an emotionless killing machine. With $1.25 million total, art director Herman Blumenthal received just $75,000 to build 20 sets covering nearly 200,000 square feet. Floors had to be engineered precisely enough that a rolling camera wouldn't wobble. Details had to be flawless on an 80-foot screen. Almost every set was reused. One medieval stairway appeared 3 times. A single underground corridor was used 9 times, with 6 lighting changes. Crichton shot fast and lean. He camera cut, meaning he filmed only the angles he intended to use, with minimal overlap. If a take didn't work, there was nothing to fall back on. I knew I could not shoot the whole film well in the 30 days I had been given, he admitted. So I picked the key scenes and concentrated on them. The rest were plainly shot in haste, with the hope that the audience would forgive me later. 2 weeks into shooting, a blank cartridge misfired. A piece of wadding struck Yul Brynner directly in the eye, scratching his cornea. It was a freak accident. Brynner shrugged it off, but the injury made it impossible for him to wear the metallic silver contact lenses that gave the gunslinger his inhuman gaze. The entire shooting schedule had to be rearranged to allow several weeks for his eye to heal. Then came the acid scene. Nobody knew how to make a face appear to bubble and dissolve on camera. Makeup artist Frank Griffith settled on a mixture of makeup and Alka-Seltzer, which fizzed when water hit it. But smoke also had to come from the face. Small tubes were glued to Brynner's skin, pumping irritating smoke into his nose and eyes. They tested it on an extra first, and he immediately burst into coughing and sputtering. Brynner held his composure through the take. The moment Crichton yelled, "Cut!" he exploded into coughing. Years later, Brynner would die of lung cancer at 65. Weeks before his death in 1985, he recorded an anti-smoking PSA that aired posthumously.
Now that I'm gone, I tell you, don't smoke. Whatever you do, just don't smoke.
On the last day of shooting, James Brolin faced a rattlesnake. The crew milked the rattler to remove its venom, but milking doesn't extract everything. Under his shirt, Brolin wore a leather and cotton pad. The snake was attached to his arm for a reverse photography shot. Suddenly, Brolin yelled he had been bitten by the small teeth on the snake's lower jaw. No lasting harm, but a genuine scare on the final day of production. Amidst the physical chaos, Crichton was fighting another battle. He wanted the audience to see the world through the gunslinger's eyes, not through a distorted lens or a red filter, but through something genuinely electronic. He wanted a machine worldview that was literally a series of pictures created by a computer. Experts told him it was impossible. The Jet Propulsion Laboratory quoted him $200,000 and 9 months of work for just 2 minutes of footage. Enter John Whitney Jr. Working with a budget of just $20,000, he agreed to do the impossible in 4 months. By his own admission, he was playing a confidence game. The process was excruciatingly manual. Whitney had to scan live-action footage frame by frame, convert each image into numerical data, and reconstruct it as a grid of coloured rectangles. A single 10-second sequence took 8 hours of computing time. The footage was painfully late. Producer Paul Lazarus recalled screening the film for MGM executives with "scene missing" cards, where the revolutionary effects should have been. They came within 2 weeks of cancelling the release. But when it finally arrived, those 2 minutes and 31 seconds changed cinema forever. It was the first time digital image processing had ever been used in a theatrical feature film. 2 weeks after shooting wrapped, Michael Crichton sat down to watch the assembled footage. He recalled the cut being horrible, boring, and self-indulgent. He left the screening room in a state of silent depression. MGM executives agreed. After their first viewing, they labelled the project a disaster. But editor David Bretherton saw what the panic-stricken director couldn't. Sequence by sequence, they reshaped the film, tightening the pace until the tension was suffocating. Crucially, composer Fred Karlin's score did the heavy lifting where the script could not. He blended traditional Western motifs with eerie, dissonant electronic textures, the sound of a piano being bowed or strings scraping against metal. The music constantly whispered to the audience that something was rotting beneath the surface. The most brilliant decision, however, was structural. Crichton deliberately crafted the final 30 minutes of the film as essentially a silent movie. The gunslinger barely speaks. Richard Benjamin's character says nothing. The terror comes entirely from movement, the score, and Brynner's relentless mechanical pursuit. Even with Bretherton's magic, some ambitious sequences never made it to the screen. Originally, Crichton planned to open with a hovercraft flying over the desert, but the model footage looked too cheap to use. A bank robbery and an entire sales room sequence were cut. Most notably, the film was originally much more violent. A sequence in medieval world, where a guest is tortured on a rack until his arms are pulled out, was removed entirely. The original ending actually had the hero destroying the gunslinger on that very rack. Crichton loved the symmetry, a complex machine being destroyed by a simple machine. But on film it looked stagey and foolish, so it was scrapped. And a final piece of trivia for the keen-eared: the TV commercial that opens the film was written by a New York advertising executive named Steve Frankfurt. Why? Because a Hollywood writers' strike prevented anyone in the film industry from writing a single line of new material. Interrupting your scheduled programming for a message from management. Here at Golden Flicker, we spare no expense to bring you the wildest stories from cinema history. But unlike Westworld, our ticket price is absolutely free. All we ask is that you engage the like protocol to ensure our systems remain operational. And if you haven't yet, please subscribe. It is the only way to guarantee you won't miss our next attraction. And trust us, nothing can go wrong, go wrong, go wrong, go wrong. Despite the heroic efforts in the editing room, MGM still had zero confidence in the final product. They were so sure it would fail that they refused to screen it for critics. Instead, they arranged a single test screening at the studio with an audience of regular people. The plan was simple. If they hated it, MGM would dump the film and cut their losses. But when the cards came back, the executives were stunned. 95% of the audience rated it excellent or good, the highest score anyone at the studio could remember. With a hit on their hands, MGM adopted an unusual release strategy they called a regional Blitzkrieg. On August 17, 1973, instead of a slow rollout, the film opened simultaneously in over 250 theaters across Chicago, Detroit, and Cleveland. The gamble paid off. It grossed $2 million in its first week alone. By the end of the year, it was MGM's biggest hit, earning millions on a meager $1.25 million investment. But Crichton, exhausted by the battle, took a year off. He felt the film had been fundamentally misunderstood. While audiences cheered for the robot mayhem, Crichton insisted the real villain wasn't the gunslinger. Everyone remembers the scene where Brynner is a robot that runs amok, he said. But there is a specific scene where people discuss whether or not to shut down the resort. For Crichton, the true horror wasn't technology going haywire. It was the corporate greed that refused to stop it.
If we can't ensure the safety of the guests, we're going to be in desperate trouble.
But we can ensure their safety. Everything's fine.
If Westworld had flopped, the landscape of modern cinema would look very different. The gunslinger didn't just die in the 70s, he was rebuilt again and again in other films. Take The Terminator. Arnold Schwarzenegger has repeatedly named Westworld as the direct inspiration for his performance as the T-800.
I saw the movie Westworld with Brynner, who played a machine. You know, Brynner is a fantastic actor. And he played a fantastic, the toughest kind of cowboy.
When Schwarzenegger met James Cameron for lunch to discuss the role, he couldn't stop talking about Brynner's machine-like behavior.
I knew the way his eye movement was, the way his head was kind of a little bit more jerky, and
Cameron offered him the role on the spot. He later admitted his great aspiration was to do better than Brynner in Westworld. Then there is the slasher genre. John Carpenter has confirmed that Westworld was a primary influence on Michael Myers in Halloween. "I saw Westworld," Carpenter said, "and the Yul Brynner character was a robot that was unkillable. I thought, that's a really cool character. So that's how I created it. The slow, mechanical walk, the blank, expressionless face, the silent, relentless pursuit. The gunslinger is the prototype for every slasher villain, from Jason Voorhees to Freddy Krueger." But the most obvious successor came from Michael Crichton himself. 20 years later, he would write another story about a high-tech theme park built by a corporation where the attractions go haywire because management prioritizes revenue over safety. When offered the chance to write a Westworld remake in the 90s, Crichton reportedly refused, saying, "I already remade that movie. The remake was called Jurassic Park." While the ideas of Westworld lived on in the Terminator and Jurassic Park, the actual franchise, well, that malfunctioned. Michael Crichton wanted no part of a sequel. MGM, continuing their streak of bad decisions, sold the sequel rights to American International Pictures for peanuts. The result was Future World, 1976. Yul Brynner returned for a single dream sequence, but the film was largely forgettable. However, in true Westworld fashion, it managed one groundbreaking technical feat. It featured the first use of 3D CGI in a major film, a rotating wireframe hand created by Ed Catmull, the man who would later co-found Pixar. Then came the short-lived TV series Beyond Westworld in 1980, which was cancelled after just 3 episodes. For decades, a remake languished in development hell. Arnold Schwarzenegger was attached to star as the gunslinger for years, but the project stalled when he became the governor of California. It wasn't until 2016 that HBO finally cracked the code, expanding Crichton's 90-minute thriller into a sprawling meditation on consciousness, free will, and the nature of suffering. The premiere drew 1.96 million viewers. The series ran for 4 seasons before HBO cancelled it in November 2022. But let's return to 1973 for our golden flicker moment. What makes Westworld uncanny to revisit today is not the gunfights or the special effects. It is how precisely a low-budget B-movie anticipated the anxieties of 2026. The film contains one of the earliest references to a computer virus in fiction. The supervisor describes the malfunctions spreading between robots like a disease, years before the term computer virus was formally defined. It also depicted, for the first time, the concept of black box AI, intelligent machines designing other intelligent machines without human oversight.
In some cases, they've been designed by other computers. We don't know exactly how they work.
And then there is the deeper philosophical question. The guests of Westworld exploit beings designed to look and feel human. The film emphasizes that guests pay $1,000 a day, adjusted for inflation. That is nearly $7,000 per day. This isn't a family holiday. And what are they buying for that price? They are paying for immunity. The film posited that in the near future, powerful people would pay a premium to travel to a secluded, lawless location to commit acts that would be heinous crimes anywhere else. In 1973, it was science fiction. Today, well, I'd like to know your opinion in the comments. Westworld was shot in 30 days on a shoestring budget by a first-time director who couldn't get a single studio besides MGM to take his calls. Its lead actor was broke. Its special effects were almost cancelled. Its executives thought it was a disaster. And yet, that cheap genre picture invented digital image processing. It created the template for the modern slasher villain. It laid the groundwork for Jurassic Park and the Terminator. Michael Crichton said Westworld was not intended to be profound. Maybe not, but 50 years later, it is hard to argue with the results. Some machines, it turns out, just keep coming. If you discovered something new today, illuminate our day by clicking like and subscribe to Golden Flicker, so you never miss a story from the annals of cinema history. Which film should we explore next? Let us know in the comments.